Today we'll take a closer look at the fuel features of RV Trip Wizard. As you can see, we've already logged in to RV Trip Wizard. I've created a demo trip called Fuel Demo, and I've added my starting location, Dallas, Texas. At this point, there should be nothing new here on the map you haven't already seen. We've got campgrounds, we've got low clearance warnings, we've got reviews, we show all our filtering. You can see I've got 7 filters engaged here. I'm really narrowing this campground search. None of that is specifically pertinent to our demo today, which is about the fuel functionality. So we're going to close the research tab and the trip tab, and let's scroll out and let's plan us a trip north and west. We'll go up to Amarillo here. This is just outside our driving range, but we don't mind. And we'll choose this campground. We'll add 1 night, and we'll add it to our trip. We'll zoom out. We're going to move west. Outside of Albuquerque, we'll pick a campground, add it to our trip. Let's go for 2 nights. Let's get that added here. And then we're going to zoom out and go west a little further. And we'll choose a campground west of Flagstaff in the Williams area. Take a look at them. We want this Grand Canyon Railway Park. We'll stay there 3 nights, and we'll add that to our trip. Let's zoom out one more time and look at our trip overall. It's a one-way trip at this point. We'll turn off the campgrounds or hide the parks with the Hide Parks button. And what we're looking for here is this triangular fuel warning icon. And there it is. Before we even get to Amarillo, we're going to need fuel. Now, how does it know we need fuel there? We opened up our trip menu because we'll need that in a moment. So again, we see here, this is where RV Trip Wizard has determined that we are going to need fuel. So let's go look at our settings. We've got a 100-gallon fuel tank with 30 gallons in reserve. That leaves us 70 gallons times our 7.2 miles per gallon. So that's where it determined we're going to need fuel. However, we did not start with a full tank of fuel. Now, Trip Wizard assumes you have a full tank when you start out, but we can change that. If we click the edit icon on our starting point, we can see that it assumes I have that full 100 gallons. But I can click override and I can enter a different value in here. The point is, unless you live very close to a fuel station and you top off your tank the minute you leave, you're probably not starting with a full tank. So I'm plugging 75 back in, which is what I had when I drew this map. With only 75 gallons in the tank, less my reserve, that's only 45 gallons to work with, times my 7.2 miles per gallon, gives me about 324 miles. And with a quick check, we can see that that's right on the money. We'll go to the Research tab, we'll go to the Points of Interest, and we'll add several fuel stations to our map. And my goal is to fill up as close to that marker as I can. I'm going to go ahead and choose this pilot station. It's not the closest, but I'm familiar with it. And I'm going to add that to my trip after my starting point. Note that I left the nights field at 0. We're not sleeping over at the travel center. Let's click on Edit and look at our fuel. The arrival fuel, or how many gallons of fuel are left in my tank by the time we get there, is at 40. And we're going to add about 60. You can see if we plug in 60, it'll automatically round it down. We could plug in 59. Perhaps you didn't even fill the tank and you had to put in 40 gallons. Either way, you can enter that and you'll have a new departure fuel amount. We'll go ahead and finish it off and we'll be leaving there with 100 gallons. And notice that the fuel warning icon is now gone. So let's scroll out and we should find that it's moved. You can see it out there west of Albuquerque. Once we've burned through our 70 gallons, it's going to warn us again. So here we are. Let's find a fuel stop close to that mark. We'll go ahead and choose the Loves this time. We'll add it to the trip. This was after our stay at Route 66 on our way west. Now, notice that just because we added it to the trip menu, it didn't make the icon go away. We still have to go in and add the fuel. Here, it looks like we've burned almost 67 gallons. We have about 33 gallons left. Obviously, depending on your vehicle, your mileage may vary. In this case, it's a 100-gallon diesel pusher. We're going to add 66, 67. We actually plug in 67. It rounds it automatically for us. Here again, we can customize that. Once again, we'll accept those values and click Save. And take a look at our trip. You'll notice that the fuel warning is off. If this were a longer trip, we would receive the next fuel warning at wherever that marker would be. So just a quick recap. We planned a trip. We added our campgrounds, our overnight stays. We saw the fuel warnings. We added fuel stops. The fuel warnings are based on the data in our settings, our miles per gallon, our fuel tank, and our reserve. Note that for motorhomes, that reserve should be at least a quarter of a tank to keep your generator from running dry. A quick note to add, I've got my miles per gallon set at 7.2, but that also factors in my generator use and my diesel heater use. If you aren't doing that and need to account for that amount of fuel, you can always use the override feature we looked at the beginning to change your arrival and departure fuel amounts. And those are the basic functions of the fuel features. Look for more of our videos on Facebook and YouTube. Just search for RV Trip Wizard.